My name is Emma Rodriguez, and I'm 24 years old living here in Denver, Colorado, where the mountains remind me every day that there are peaks to climb and dreams to chase, which is exactly what I thought I was doing until 3 months ago when my entire world came crashing down around me like an avalanche I never saw coming. So let me take you back to the beginning when I was just a kid watching my parents Maria and Carlos worked double shifts at the hospital where mom was a nurse and dad was a maintenance supervisor, and every Friday night they would sit at our old kitchen table with a calculator and a stack of bills, carefully setting aside $20 or $30 into what they called Emma's Future Fund, which was this old coffee tin that sat on top of our refrigerator and grew heavier each month as I grew older and dreamed bigger about becoming an engineer, just like my uncle who built bridges across impossible rivers and designed buildings that touched the sky, while my older brother Marcus, who's 28, seemed to float through life effortlessly as the golden child who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes, even when he dropped out of college twice and moved back home with different girlfriends every few months. But somehow I never resented him because he was charming and funny and protective of me until he met Brittany last year, and suddenly everything changed because she was this blonde princess who expected everything to be perfect and expensive and handed to her on a silver platter, which should have been a red flag. But love makes people blind and stupid sometimes. So when I finally finished my 2 years at community college with a perfect GPA and got accepted to Colorado School of Mines for mechanical engineering, I was over the moon because this was my moment to make something of myself and honor all those sacrifices my parents made. But when we sat down for Sunday dinner last month to celebrate my acceptance, mom and dad exchanged these weird glances before dad cleared his throat and said, "Emma, we need to talk about your college funding," and my stomach dropped because I could hear the hesitation in his voice. And then mom started crying as she explained that Marcus and Brittany needed $40,000 for their dream wedding, and they had decided to give them my entire college fund because weddings are once in a lifetime. And I could always take out student loans, and the room started spinning as I realized that 20 years of their sacrifice and my hard work was being handed over for one day of flowers and cake and dancing. And when I tried to explain that this would destroy my future, Marcus just shrugged and said I was being selfish and dramatic, which led to the worst fight our family had ever had, ending with me storming out and not speaking to any of them for 3 days until Wednesday morning when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize and a voice that would change everything. The voice on the other end belonged to Dr. Sarah Patterson from the Colorado School of Mines admissions office, and she was calling to congratulate me on being selected for the Henderson Merit Scholarship, which was apparently this incredibly prestigious program that I had applied for back in January but honestly forgotten about in all the chaos of finishing my community college courses. And she explained that the scholarship would cover my entire tuition plus a living stipend for all 4 years, but there was a catch because I needed to submit my enrollment confirmation along with detailed financial documentation within exactly 14 days to prove that I met their socioeconomic criteria, and my hands were literally shaking as I hung up the phone because this was like winning the lottery, except the ticket was about to expire and I had no idea how to cash it in. So I drove straight to my parents' house, where I found them in the kitchen looking exhausted and guilty. And when I told them about the scholarship, mom started crying again, but this time from relief, and dad kept saying, "This is a sign, Mija, this is God giving us a second chance." But then Marcus walked in with his stupid, smug face, and when he heard about the scholarship, I watched his expression change from confusion to panic because he realized that if I got a full ride, then there would be no reason for our parents to give him my college fund. And suddenly he was talking about how scholarships have hidden costs and how I probably wouldn't even like engineering anyway, and how he and Brittany had already put deposits down on everything for the wedding, which led me to ask exactly how much everything was costing. And that's when the truth came out that the wedding had ballooned from $40,000 to $60,000. Because Brittany insisted on having white doves and a 12-piece orchestra and flowers flown in from Ecuador and a dress that cost more than our car, and I could see the panic in my parents' eyes as they realized they were in way over their heads, but Marcus kept pushing, saying they had made a commitment and that family means keeping your promises even when it's inconvenient. And the next week became this horrible Cold War where I spent every day gathering transcripts and tax forms and bank statements for my scholarship application while Marcus followed me around the house making snide comments about how I was being ungrateful and selfish and how I was trying to ruin the happiest day of his life. And Brittany started showing up at random times to discuss wedding plans with Mom as if nothing had changed, and I felt like I was going crazy until Friday afternoon when I was looking for my birth certificate in Dad's filing cabinet, and I accidentally knocked over a stack of papers, and as I bent down to pick them up, I saw something that made my blood run cold because there were credit card statements with Marcus's name on them showing balances that made $60,000 look like pocket change. The credit card statements I was holding showed balances of $15,000 on one card, $22,000 on another, and $38,000 on a third one. And as I flipped through more papers, I found casino receipts from Black Hawk and betting slips from online poker sites, and suddenly everything made sense about why Marcus was so desperate for that wedding money. Because this wasn't about celebrating his love for Brittany, this was about keeping his creditors from breaking his legs or worse, and I sat there on the floor of Dad's office with my heart pounding as I realized my brother hadn't just asked our parents to fund his wedding, he had manipulated them into paying off his gambling debts without them even knowing it. And when I confronted him that evening in the garage where he was supposed to be organizing wedding decorations, he took one look at the papers in my hand and completely fell apart like a house of cards in the wind and started sobbing about how it started with just friendly poker games with coworkers, but then he discovered online casinos and sports betting, and before he knew it, he was borrowing money from loan sharks to pay off credit cards and using credit cards to pay off loan sharks, and the whole thing spiraled completely out of control until he owed more money than he could make in 2 years, and he begged me not to tell Mom and Dad because it would kill them to know their golden boy was such a failure, and promised he would find another way to handle everything if I just kept quiet about it. But meanwhile, Brittany was still calling Mom every day with new additions to the wedding, like a chocolate fountain and a mariachi band and custom napkins with their faces printed on them, completely oblivious to the fact that her future husband was drowning in debt and lying to everyone, including her. And I felt like I was being torn in half because on one side I had my brother, who despite everything was still my brother, begging me to protect him, and on the other side I had my entire future hanging by a thread with only 5 days left until my scholarship deadline, and every day that passed felt like watching a time bomb countdown while my family lived in this bubble of lies and false hope. And Marcus kept promising he would figure something out while Brittany kept spending money we didn't have, and my parents kept believing everything was fine. And I realized I was the only one who knew the truth about anything, which meant I was the only one who could save everyone or destroy them. And that's when I made a decision that surprised even me, because instead of going to my parents first, I decided to have a conversation with Brittany herself. I decided to tell my parents everything because keeping Marcus's secret was eating me alive. And when I walked into the living room where Mom was folding laundry and Dad was watching the news, I just started talking and told them about the credit card statements and the casino receipts and the gambling debts that totaled over $75,000, and I watched their faces go through every emotion possible, from confusion to disbelief to horror to devastating sadness. And instead of exploding with anger like I expected, Dad just put his head in his hands and started crying, which I had never seen before. And Mom immediately called Marcus and told him to come over right now. And when he arrived 20 minutes later, looking like he hadn't slept in weeks, the three of us were sitting there waiting for him, and he took one look at our faces and knew That his house of lies had finally collapsed, and what followed was the most honest conversation our family had ever had as Marcus broke down completely and admitted that he had been gambling for 3 years and had borrowed money from dangerous people and had been using the wedding as cover to get enough money to pay them off before they hurt him or came after our family, and Mom kept asking why he didn't come to them sooner, and he said he was ashamed and thought he could fix it himself. And then Brittany showed up because Marcus had texted her to come over, and when she walked into this scene of her fiancé sobbing and confessing to gambling addiction and massive debt, her reaction was not what anyone expected, because instead of being supportive or understanding, she immediately started yelling about how this would ruin everything and how she had already sent out invitations and booked venues and told all her friends about her dream wedding, and she actually said that if the wedding didn't happen exactly as planned, she would leave Marcus, which made me realize that she didn't love him at all. She just loved the idea of being a bride and having a party, and my parents were devastated, not just by Marcus's lies, but by their own guilt over taking away my future for what was essentially a fraud. And with only 3 days left until my scholarship deadline, they started talking about taking out loans against the house to fund both my college needs and a smaller wedding for Marcus. But that's when I decided to do some digging into Brittany herself, and what I found on her social media made everything even worse, because hidden in her Instagram messages that she hadn't made private was evidence that she had been planning to leave Marcus right after the honeymoon anyway, and had been telling her friends that she just wanted one amazing party before she moved to California to pursue her modeling career, which meant she was going to take our family for everything we had and then disappear, leaving Marcus heartbroken and us financially ruined. And that's when I knew we had to have one final confrontation that would determine everyone's future. The confrontation happened 3 days before my scholarship deadline, when I gathered my entire family, including Brittany, in our living room and laid out everything I had discovered about her secret plans to leave Marcus after the honeymoon, and her messages to friends about just wanting one expensive party before moving to California, and the look on Marcus's face when he realized that the woman he thought he loved had been using him was heartbreaking, but also liberating, because suddenly he could see clearly for the first time in months. And he turned to Brittany and asked if it was true, and instead of denying it, she actually got angry at me for invading her privacy and said that Marcus was a loser with no ambition, and she deserved better than to be tied down to someone with gambling problems, which was the moment Marcus finally saw her true colors and told her the wedding was off, and she screamed that she would sue us for the deposits and stormed out of our house forever while slamming the door so hard it rattled the windows. And after she left, there was this strange calm that settled over our family as we realized we were finally free from her manipulation, and Marcus looked at all of us and said he wanted to check himself into a gambling addiction treatment program and would get a second job to pay back the money he owed, and my parents immediately said they would help him figure out a payment plan with his creditors. And then they turned to me with tears in their eyes and said that my college fund was mine again, and they were sorry they had ever considered taking it away. And the next morning I submitted my scholarship application with all the required documents, and 2 weeks later I got the call that I had been accepted into the program with full funding. And now 6 months later, as I sit in my dorm room at Colorado School of Mines studying for my advanced calculus exam, I can hardly believe how much has changed, because Marcus has been clean from gambling for 5 months and is working 2 jobs and going to therapy, and has already paid off one of his credit cards. And our parents have learned to communicate better and ask harder questions instead of just believing everything looks perfect on the surface. And I have learned that sometimes you have to fight for your dreams, even when the people who should support you are too caught up in their own problems to see clearly. And that family loyalty doesn't mean staying silent when someone is making destructive choices. It means caring enough to tell the truth even when it hurts. And most importantly, I learned that my worth isn't determined by Whether other people value my dreams, but by how hard I'm willing to fight for them myself. And as I look out my window at the Rocky Mountains, I know that there are still peaks to climb and bridges to build and futures to create.